What's up, everybody? It's February 3rd, 2020, and this is episode 39 of the Clappercast. I'm Burke,
And I'm Sean.
and we had quite a battle this week, Sean. Why don't we get into that first?
The Battle of Alberta is alive and well. What a week for that matchup, right?
The storyline really wrote itself.
I think so. It's been a great progression for them, but through the season with the way the game right before New Year's went, and then the lead up into this week where they played twice in like 4 days or something.
Yeah, it was a home and home for the Flames, but Edmonton had a game in between. So it was teams really liked each other by that second game.
Oh, they were getting up close and personal, right? Totally cool with each other in their personal spaces, it's all that good bonding and stuff, right?
Couple friendlies. You could feel the provincial
Yeah,
love.
yeah. I mean the lead up into Wednesday's game, that was the first of the two this week. There was a lot of hype going into this one after the way the past game went between Matthew Tkachuk and Zach Kassian, with Tkachuk taking a few runs at Kassian that's a lot of people in the hockey world said were dirty and completely unnecessary, and then Kassian just beat up and ragdolled Tkachuk after the second one. So there was a lot of hype leading up to Wednesday's game. George Peros, who's the head of the Department of Player Safety right now, actually went to attend the game in person. Um, that game was it was like a Battle of Alberta game, but it wasn't anything special, I don't think. Um, Kachuk actually did fight Kassian, and Kassian, of course, beat him pretty handily. But there was nothing too significant in that game. The major event was Saturday.
That first game, though, had Ryan Nugent-Hopkins fight Sean Monahan. So that was
How could I forget
Monahan's
that?
first career fight, and that was Nugent's like third or second.
Third, yeah.
And I have that written down here that Nuge is actually an unreal fighter.
He's surprisingly good with that type of thing. He's not very big or strong, but he knows how to use what he's got.
Well, live that fight, I thought that Nuge was getting his ass kicked, and then he kind of came back. But if you watch it again, for the first half of that fight, he didn't get hit. He was dodging all of Monahan's
Hmm.
wild throws, and then he just took a step back, and then he gave him a few uppercuts, and,
Yeah,
and then Monahan didn't even get a single punch on him.
that's basically Ryan Nugent Cassian, honestly.
Yeah, he must have been taking some lessons going into that
He was
game.
preparing. He had a month to prepare for that one.
Yeah,
Probably
during
had
the
a few fighting
break.
lessons with Cass.
The only real story for that game is that it was disappointing that I had to go to a shootout
Yeah,
for
it was actually a good
winners,
game of hockey. It was fast paced, like action packed, everything,
back and
and then it
forth.
ended in a shootout.
Yeah, and then big save Dave Riddick did a bat flip of his stick after
Yes,
shutting down Draisaitl in the shootout for the win.
technically he didn't shut Draisaitl down. The post did.
Yeah, didn't the Oilers have two posts in that shootout?
Yes, their first two shoot. Yeah, both their shooters hit the post, or the first two anyway. I can't even remember the third went.
Yeah, and then he poke checked Dry, right? I thought he got him with a huge poke.
One of the two. Was it Draisaitl got with the poke?
I think so. So anyway, Draisaitl had a comment after the game where it's like he didn't really shut us down. The post did. Like I wouldn't be acting like
Yeah,
that if I post saved you on
it
two
was
of
like
those.
we hit two posts and he's acting like they won the Stanley Cup.
Yeah,
Was the gist of the quote, and it's a fair point. I have no issue with the stick flip because I think it's just kind of funny and it's part of the heated battle the two teams have. I don't see much of an issue with it.
that first game was in Edmonton too.
Yeah, so he did that on enemy territory.
Yeah, send him packing. Yeah, and then the next game on Saturday was pretty
This
wild.
was the throwdown. This was the yeah, wild to say the least.
Goalie fight alert. Cam Talbot and Mike Smith fought in a line brawl basically. So that was
Yep,
pretty awesome.
I think the
That
line brawl is an accurate description.
you saw Mike Smith skate to center and wait, and then Darnell Nurse was nice enough to all fans of hockey to point to Cam Talbot that Mike Smith was waiting for him and that he had to go fight him.
Yeah, yeah. So that's good guy Darnell Nurse there with the chaotic evil.
He knows what the fans want. He's the
Yeah,
hero that we need.
the showman.
He's getting the people going.
Yeah. So the brawl we're talking about was kind of the highlight of that game. So 25 seconds left in the second period. The Oilers had a chance in the offensive zone, and Sam Gagner took an extra swing at the puck as Cam Talbot laid down on it, so he was able to push the puck into the net. But Cam Talbot did not like getting the extra swing, so Talbot started beating Gagner up, which then got a couple other Flames on top of Gagner as well. Oilers got into it. Eventually, Sam Gagner was pulled off and ended up over at the blue line getting beat up by Mark Giordano and Matthew Tkachuk at the same time. Then Ethan Bear came over, grabbed Matthew Tkachuk off, and Ethan Bear had his first career fight there against Matthew Tkachuk. And then, as we already talked about, the goalie fight between Cam Talbot and Mike Smith, and that was quite the eventful 5 minutes on the ice.
Yeah, it was unreal. It was a great scene, and the end result was that Mike Smith and Cam Talbot were ejected, so they had to have the backups come in.
Yeah,
So
and Calgary had actually already swapped their goalies because Edmonton was winning quite easily at that point, or had been scoring quite easily. So Dave Riddick, who was pulled earlier in the second, came back in. My favorite point, actually, or favorite part about that, is that in the second intermission, one of the CBC panelists was talking about how the Flames had an advantage going into the third because their goalie was already warmed up.
and
The
he was
goalie
having a
who's been
bad
pulled.
game.
Yeah. So because Koskinen came in cold off the bench and Riddick was already in the game and gotten pulled, the Flames had an advantage.
That makes sense,
So as
right?
we saw, that didn't work very well as Edmonton ended up winning 8-3.
That advantage,
Yeah,
he squandered it.
advantage, big save, Dave.
Yeah, that was a pretty eventful game. It was pretty awesome to
Yeah,
see that those teams still hate each other and that it's super entertaining hockey. I mean, if you're a fan of fights or not, you have to admit that that's pretty entertaining hockey, and that whoever went
it
to that
is.
game got their money's worth, and you know it was exciting, like playoff like hockey. And that brings me to my next point is that how bad do we need this playoff series in the
I don't know if I could
West?
handle that,
Like,
honestly.
we've had the big rivalries of the Boston Leafs series are tremendous. We have the Caps Pens, which is an awesome second round series usually. We've had this kind of new rivalry of the Sharks and Golden Knights, and we need that Flames Oilers playoff
Because,
series.
yeah, the Battle of Alberta is one of the most historically recognized rivalries in the sport, I think. Like it's up there with like the old school Leafs Habs type thing, right?
Yeah, yeah, we need it, and the playoff format is set up to make it happen.
That easily. And the way the standings are sitting this year, they've basically been in 2 and 3 in that division off and on for over the last month and a half. So it could very realistically happen,
Oh man.
especially as Vancouver still seems to be hanging on to the division lead, and Vegas and Arizona have been having a little bit of a slump, leaving Edmonton and Calgary in 2 and 3.
Oh, we need it so bad.
Yeah.
I this is kind of a dumb thing, but I sent you a text about how I saw this person in a car in the city that I live, and they had a Flames flag and an Oilers flag on their car. And I don't know if it was
I
just
can't
because
even
it was Battle of
comprehend that.
Alberta time, but like, is that not a huge faux pas? Like, that's a huge hockey no-no, is
You,
to have both sides of the rivalry.
what's Wes McCauley's number? We need to get him to drop a "you can't do that."
I mean, maybe it's like two people from Alberta who are like, together or share a car, and like that's one guy got
That's the
a
compromise.
flag, the other person had to get a flag just to let them know. I don't know. It just seems like such a weird thing to do. It'd be like if I had a Pens flag or something on my car. It's just
Can he get
stupid.
you one for Christmas?
Yeah, no thanks. Just burn it. This is a weird one. And then one other thing is with this Battle of Alberta is that Draisaitl went beast mode this last week. He had 8 points in 3 games, I think.
That
It's
sounds about right.
just unreal. I think he was named the first star of the week.
He was.
I think. who else was named? I know JT Miller was, and maybe Stamkos or Kucherov or something.
I believe I saw Stamkos.
Yeah. So anyway, Draisaitl has been playing not with McDavid, but with Kyler Yamamoto, and who else is on that line?
Ryan Nugent-Hopkins.
Right. So they're kind of
Yeah, so that's the Oilers' second line right now, and you could honestly say it's their first line because of how good they are playing. But yeah, Nugent Hopkins, Draisaitl, and Yamamoto have combined to actually make an incredible forward line.
yeah, it's really cool because Yamamoto kind of. I mean, Oilers fans have been on him like pretty high on him for a while,
We've
but
been really hyped on the guy for a few years. I was personally stoked when they picked him up in the draft a few years back. It's been kind of like not disappointing, but kind of hard to see because like he's had a chance at the beginning of both of the last two seasons, like, and he's lit it up in the preseason, but regular season he hasn't been able to put anything together. He got called up this year about a month ago, or a few weeks ago, and he's got like 10 points in 11 games since. And he's interestingly enough, the 5'6" Kyler Yamamoto is the net front presence the Oilers have needed for like 5-6 years.
yeah, I was gonna say that for a smaller guy, he plays a big man's game and he like
He
lays
does.
the body on people and
Oh yeah,
he
he
throws
doesn't shy
hits
away from
around
anything.
and
He throws hits.
yeah, plays in front of the
He
net.
goes and drives to the net and scores like a lot of goals from the slot. Like he does not realize how big he is, but he does it so well.
Yeah, he's gonna be a great player for them.
Yeah, I think I think something he's learned really well is how to utilize his size and as shiftiness rather than trying to be like the guy out there. He's shifty and elusive, so he can just like appear in areas. He can just like go underneath a guy's arm to get to the puck at a different angle, stuff like that. And I think that's a really good style for him.
Being smart about it.
Exactly.
Unless you have anything else to add to the Battle of Alberta.
I want to make fun of Kachuk again for a couple of plays that he had.
Okay.
So two plays that stood out in Saturday night's game with Matthew Kachuk were the first one in that line brawl where he was basically teaming up with Giordano to beat up Sam Gagner. So I'm assuming that Kachuk was the third guy into that little brawl, that he only was able to take on Gagner because someone was already beating him up. And then near the end of the game, him and another Flames defender, I can't remember who it was, took down Gaetan Haas on a breakaway. And then Kachuk went into the corner with Haas, and they kind of gave each other a couple of shoves. So the linesman came in, broke them up, and then Kachuk started throwing punches.
Yeah, tough.
So I'm just kind of watching him play, and it's like, dude, what are you doing? You've just gotten beaten up like 3 times in the last 2 games.
Classic tough guy move.
Yeah, which I think it's a great ending that Haas scored on that breakaway or on the penalty shot he got. So he made it like 8-3 with 2 minutes left or something.
Just rubbing salt in the wound.
I think that was a good ending.
Yeah, it was a pretty wild couple of games because the first game was so tight and then the next game was just Oilers blowout.
It was the good type of battle. So like you mentioned earlier about whether or not you're okay with fighting, it was good to watch. The type of fighting that happened in this game is the stuff that is like personally I'm okay with because it actually fits the like narrative of the game.
Right, the legitimate.
Like you could feel that coming.
Moment. Like it's not planned. Like it's just these guys hate each other, and there's been some liberties being taken out there, and you got to answer for it. That sort of stuff.
Exactly. It wasn't the type of stuff where it's like, oh, two fighters are on the ice, guess they're gonna fight. There was actually like a lead up in the game to that brawl, to that stuff. And I think that's the type of fighting that like the game is gonna need to keep, that should stay. And I think that's what made that game so good, was like the battle, the emotion that came out in that brawl.
For sure. Definitely agree.
So now we get to wait until the last game of the season for Edmonton anyways, on April 4th for the final Battle of Alberta.
Oh, and what if it is going to be
a couple of months
Oilers,
to calm down?
Flames series. That could be like a little intro game.
Imagine if this is like for home ice advantage in the playoffs or something.
Ooh, that would be too much. It'd be like an 8-game series.
Basically.
Okay, so now I want to move on to another young player. We mentioned Yamamoto. Is Jesperi Kotkaniemi from Montreal. He's had his struggles this year, and he has just been sent down to the Laval Rocket, the AHL team of the Montreal Canadiens. So he's kind of struggled. He's only got 8 points in 36 games this year. Not
Yeah, I
great.
watching him play, watching his like skill level and stuff, I'm surprised he hasn't been able to put anything together like that. That being said, I know Montreal has struggled a bit through the year with especially with some injuries to key players. But I mean, what's it? It's his second season. He's so, sophomore slump, I guess.
I guess kind of small, and he has some skill, but he's just kind of not putting it all together. That all being said, he's still 19, so
Yeah.
there's time for him. I
Oh,
think rushing him into the NHL may have been a bit premature. He did have 34 points last year, but he's still a small guy. But I did want to mention that one young center kind of gets taken out of the lineup, and one young center has really thrived for the Montreal Canadiens, and that's Nick Suzuki. So he's staying in the lineup, and he's got 33 points in 54 games this year. He's kind of been a
yeah,
bright spot for them.
yeah. So the Habs had a few young players who were poised to break into the lineup this year. Suzuki, Kotkaniemi, and Ryan Paling as well. But the way Suzuki's broken in, I mean, it kind of made the decision to send Kotkaniemi down a bit easier, I think,
Hmm.
because they already have one guy who's filled his spot basically.
Yeah,
So at this point, like there is no good reason to not send Kotkaniemi down for a little bit to help him develop a bit, get some confidence back, and work on some of the things in his game.
absolutely.
I think, yeah, it was a pretty good decision, and it's probably a good thing they noticed it and just did it now instead of kind of making him wait the rest of the year.
Yeah, rather than struggle longer. It makes it even harder to go down when you've been up for the whole year.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
And the season that
at least
Montreal
at
is
least this
having.
way he's got a couple of months too.
Yeah. Um, I guess we'll stick with the Canadian team theme here. The Winnipeg Jets. So it came out today that team and Dustin Byfuglien are working hard together to for the purpose of terminating his contract, which would get rid of that suspension that he's serving and would free up some cap space for them. So what do you think about that?
It kind of came out of nowhere. I think based off of how the situation was playing out at the last update, like before the season even started, it doesn't surprise me that this is kind of where they're working towards. One of the articles I'm looking at is kind of talking about irreconcilable differences that between the player and the team that just cannot be dealt with properly. And I mean the timing, so I guess he would have to do so by the 24th if he wants to play again this season, which it also looks like Byfuglien hasn't played at all, or he's been skating this year, so I don't think he's going to play at all this season.
Yeah, I don't think he's been training.
No, there's no way he's going to be able to go, especially if he's been injured and rehabbing. He's not going to be in game shape at all.
No. What is his cap hit?
But exactly. So let's see.
7.6.
Yeah. So that frees up a lot of room for Winnipeg. So they're going to be pretty happy to get this done before the trade deadline, so that they're actually going to be able to make a couple of moves, possibly bring someone in, possibly make a move in the offseason, depending where they're at.
Yeah, for sure. Because I wouldn't say that they're out of it right now, but they got some ground to cover to get back into the playoff race. They're kind of right in the thick of it with Chicago, Nashville, Arizona for that second wild card spot. So
Yeah,
if they're gonna do
yeah,
something, they better
they're
do it earlier rather than later.
they're like 6 points out of a divisional spot, but they're 3 points out of a wild card spot. So division's kind of getting out of reach. It's hard to make up any ground this late in the year. But with one hot streak, especially especially because Arizona's been so slumping lately that if Winnipeg can turn themselves around, they're going to be hopefully able to push back into a playoff spot.
Yeah, they need some defense, I think. So if they can free up that cap space, and then they already have some cap space, so that'll give them a lot of money to play with if they want to make a push. We'll see. But yeah, it's kind of interesting how it all played out with Dustin Byfuglien. How the lips were pretty sealed on what was going on there for a long time, and then it came out about his injury, and now it's like contract termination. So it's
Well, it is a big deal. You don't hear too often of too many contracts being terminated like that. You
yeah,
sometimes hear it for like fringe players who are just trying to go back to Europe and play at home or something. But for NHLers, you don't hear about it very often.
yeah, it's like Mike Richards basically.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's pretty few and far between, few and far between for that. So yeah, it's pretty wild how the story has definitely developed. Um,
Personally, I'm interested to see the conclusion because I want to know what was actually happening. I want to know if he was actually hurt and the team didn't know about it, or like when he got hurt himself, or like what happened there.
yeah, and what are the differences that they can't overcome? Very bizarro.
Yeah.
And then like the team probably won't like him for dicking them around at the start of the year.
Well, for sure. I mean, at the point, even if like he had been, training, rehabbing, in game shape, ready to go, after this all went down, would he even want to play for them? Would they even want him to play for them? Would that be the type of thing they could even overcome? So like, would this have happened either way?
Yeah, it's tough to say. Well, with some of their bridge deals expiring in a few years, that money that he has could be super valuable. So we'll see how the Jets play it. They've definitely fallen from where they were last year.
They have, but they're doing surprisingly well considering all things. I think
Yeah,
Connor Hellebuck's having a good season again overall.
I think that's what's really keeping them in it is that their
Yes,
goaltending has been unreal, but their
he's
defense
had
has
a bit of a
been
bounce back.
real bad. They're playing a lot of defensive hockey, and they're not a exceptionally good defensive team, so it's been rough. Let's stick with the Canadian theme here. Let's talk about the Leafs, everybody's favorite team. They lost
Canada's
tonight
team.
against they lost tonight against Florida, which was a big game for them. Um,
So you were pointing out before we started here that this game had huge standings implications for both teams, and the Leafs gave up four unanswered goals to lose it. I think was the final.
mhm. Yeah, Marner had a pretty bad giveaway with the goalie pulled, and then I think he gave it right up to I don't know who it was, but Florida player at the Leafs blue line, and then he tried to haul him down, he tried to hook him down, and the guy ended up scoring anyway. But it's just, I think the big thing was that,
Comedy of errors.
yeah, the Leafs were sitting in that third Atlantic divisional spot, and Florida was right on their heels, and this game actually swapped their spots. So
Yep.
now Florida is third in the Atlantic, and they have games in hand on Toronto. So that was a important game to win for Toronto to kind of secure their spot there a little bit. But they
Yeah,
unfortunately
because
had
really, aside
their
from aside from Florida and Toronto, there is no pressure from below for that same spot. So it's basically just between those two teams, which one is going to have the best stretch. So for Toronto to not even get a point out of this game is going to be that's probably going to be one of those games you look back at the end of the season and they're like, oh, they could have had a couple points there.
absolutely. And the way that the Metro is right now, those wild card spots are going to be tough to get. So if you're not getting that third Atlantic spot, you're going to be fighting teams like Columbus, New York Islanders, Carolina, Philly, Pittsburgh.
So technically, we're sitting right now. Toronto is tied with Philadelphia and Carolina for the third or the second wild card spot. But we've seen how those teams are playing, like you said, and they've also been way hotter than the Leafs over the last 10. So they've got a little bit of a stronger hold on it right now. especially having less games played.
Yeah, this is the time where games in hand become very important, and hot streaks.
Now,
And
in this game too, there was also a major potential injury here for the Leafs that they could really struggle with if this is anything long term at this time of year.
yeah, they had their goaltender, Freddie Anderson. He went down, left the game, and that is pretty no bueno for the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Yeah,
He has been
he
a real monster for them, and to lose him is huge.
yeah he got run twice in the first period. Once was more of a crash right into his midsection and pads. He got up from that, and then another collision was kind of like a Florida player skated to the net and then turned around and kind of clipped him in the head with his hip or butt. And that one, if you look at Anderson on the replay, he was he was down on his knees for a couple of seconds more than you would expect for where the play was, and he kind of it cut off before you could see him get up and see how he looked, but he was down for a bit longer, and the injury came out as being an upper body injury. So the speculation, anyways, this keyword is there is speculation, is that he might have been pulled as a or a concussion spotter type thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's unfortunately best case scenario. If it is a concussion, though, that's pretty bad. But
Yeah.
in a game as huge as that, it would be tough to pull him out for just just in case. Hutchinson, he let in 3 or 4 as soon as he came in, so it's not
So
ideal to have him as your starter moving forward.
no, which we've seen over the last couple of weeks a lot of heat on Alexander Georgiev of the New York Rangers as a potential trade target, and we saw the Leafs were interested in him pretty early. If Anderson is out long term until the end of the season, do the Leafs make a big play to get Georgiev in there to be their starter for the rest of the year?
Yeah, I think they target Georgiev or somebody else to try and get, a competent backup to fill in. Not backup, but like not a
A
long-term
backup who can
starter.
be a starter.
Yeah, yeah, someone who can fill in. Um, I think they were gonna have to if he's hurt and he's gonna miss a significant chunk of time because, like we were talking about, the standings how they are, they can't afford to slip any further. So they're gonna have to do something, and I think they might have to give up more than they wanted to, because
Oh, for sure.
they would have lost their leverage here. So
Yeah, I mean,
um,
once the other team knows exactly what you need, it's kind of hard to release them. And
yeah, and
when
it's been the
New York can
storyline.
just be like, well, you need him though.
Yeah, yeah, give us a first
Yeah.
plus.
Oh, no doubt.
I mean, the rumor has been Kapanen is kind of going to be the trade chip, but I don't think he's going to warrant very much on his own,
No.
especially for New York, which is looking for the future. So I don't think that they're going to want Kapanen on his own. So
They would need more than Kapanen for Georgiev. They would
absolutely.
need a draft pick or a better prospect
Hmm.
thrown in there. Now Kapanen is having an okay season so far, I believe, but that's not enough to kind of negate how he's been kind of one of those prospects that hasn't really been able to put it together over the last few seasons in the NHL.
Yeah, he's got his speed, and that's pretty much it, I think. So, I think he's only out on the PK sometimes because he's fast, leading to a
Kind
lot
of a
of
Grabner type thing. I
breakaways.
guess Grabner is okay at the defensive side, but
Yeah. Um, but I think it's going to be hardball for the Leafs here to get anybody. I think there's some other goalies that are available, or at least they might target. The most extreme would be Robin Lehner on Chicago.
ooh, that would be a big
Um,
one.
that would be huge. He's a little bit more expensive, but if there's salary retained, I think they could do it. as long as they send someone back and this is the salary cap works out. But that would be the most extreme. I think like uh,
I would
Casey
have thrown
DeSmith.
Jacob Markstrom into this type of thing too, but it sounds like he's working on extension in Vancouver, so I can't see him getting traded at this point.
No, I think he's kind of the same level of importance as Freddie Anderson is to the Leafs to the
Yeah,
Canucks. So he's their guy. He plays a lot of games. I think with the Canucks in first place in the Pacific, that yeah, they'll probably want to hang on to
they're
him even
not
if
they're
he
not going to
doesn't
be
sign.
selling like that.
Yeah, they'll try and
Now
make
you
a
mentioned
playoff
Casey
push.
DeSmith. I think Pittsburgh has a bit of abundance of goalies that they could afford to give up one of them.
Yeah, with the emergence of Tristan Jarry this season, and with Matt Murray coming back to form a little bit, I think that yeah they can afford to lose Casey DeSmith, and I think that might be someone who could play for Toronto, but I'm not sure it's as guaranteed as definitely Leonard would be.
No, I think DeSmith would be more of a risk. See, he did pretty good last season, but he doesn't have quite as much experience as some of the others. I mean, Georgiev doesn't either, but there's a lot of hype around how he plays, and
Yeah,
DeSmith keeps getting overshadowed in Pittsburgh, and kind of wonder if it's like, is he doing okay because the team's good, or is he actually good himself?
yeah, and I think Georgiev has shown that he's competent in that backup role, backing up the King Lundqvist. But with Igor Shesterkin coming in this season, kind of the
Right.
writing's kind of on the wall for him. Is that he's not the future of that team. He's going to want to
Yeah.
go somewhere else if he wants to be a starter. So I mean, we were talking about the Leafs bargaining position on that. Um, well, it kind of goes both ways because for New York Rangers, it's going to be like, well, we know he's going to leave, so at least this point you can get something for him rather than just let him walk. So there is that
Very
to
true.
consider too. But yeah, I think if it does come out that Anderson is hurt after tonight's game, that they will make a huge play for a goalie because at this point, if Hutchinson is their starter, who is the backup? It's going to be that Kaskasuo or somebody
I
else.
think it has to be. I think he's the only NHL capable person in their system.
And that's not a great place to be in when you're trying to get into a playoff spot.
No, like, I mean, running Michael Hutchinson as your starter. I mean, we just saw what he did today.
Yeah, not
That
great.
isn't quite what you want.
Yeah, 4 unanswered goals in the third
Now,
period.
some of that has to go on the team for that, but there's a little bit of it, like the momentum shift that kind of takes the heat away from the forwards. But at a certain point, you kind of have to change your tone and rally around it a little bit, or and change the tone of the game.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And the Leafs have how many guys on their team who are fully capable of doing that when they want.
Yeah, they're gonna need something to change. Do you have any other comments about Canadian teams? I have one thing I want to bring up about a US team before we move on here. I'll take the
Go right ahead with
silence
that
as a
team.
no. Okay. So this is kind of a weird one, but kind of came out this week that the Coyotes may have violated some sort of combine testing policy of the NHL
Oh yeah,
because they were having their own independent combine separate from the draft combine. So they're getting
yeah.
CHL players to come and run all the normal combine things, but just for the Coyotes. That was before the draft. So this is kind of a thing where they might get penalized for this, even though it's not explicitly stated you can't do this. It just kind of goes against the, I don't know, I guess, idea of a fair draft. I
Yeah,
don't
they
know.
were doing, it's kind of a weird one because I'd never heard of this type of thing before, but it's like you're not allowed to have private combines before the full NHL draft combine, like the official one. once it's after that draft combine, you can have those, but they were doing it before. And I think
Right.
that's where the legitimacy or the legality, I guess, is come into question that they're being investigated for is like, were they doing this before the official draft combine? So I'm kind of interested to see how this plays out just in terms of, I mean, a penalty.
Yeah. I think my understanding is that it's like about like physical testing. So like um so here's an article. It says that per the NHL's combine testing policy, no physical testing is permitted for prospects on the invite list before the combine. The Coyotes do not believe they violated that rule. It says the Coyotes did interview numerous draft eligible prospects but did not run any physical tests. So instead, they were asking them questions about their workout habits and stuff like that. So I guess this investigation will look into if they actually did physical testing or not, and then if that's a pretty black and white metric to see if they broke the rule or not. But it's
Okay.
kind of weird. This like I didn't know that that was not allowed. That there's only the one combine.
Yeah, it's such like a random thing to come out. Like no one would ever really think about it, and you just kind of assume that there's type of stuff happens. But I I want to see the official like ruling to understand exactly what's going on because they're talking a lot about like the semantics of it and like did they do anything technically illegal or against the policies or did they just kind of do the borderline like follow it to the word type thing?
Yeah,
Because I'm seeing a thing here that's talking about like you said the physical testing part that they might have just done like interviews or something or talked to them. They didn't actually like physically test them in any way.
they just talked in the gym.
Yeah. So I'm interested to see kind of where this goes to learn about the ruling and kind of get an explanation of exactly what happened.
Yeah, and if there is a penalty involved, I'm curious to see what it would be. If it's just a fine to the franchise, or if there's anything that impacts the team moving forward, like draft pick
They have to
wise.
evaluate their prospects at the draft combine with blindfolds on.
They only get players like Sam Bennett that can't do pull-ups.
Yeah. Anyone who's got a shoulder injury, that's the only guys you're allowed to evaluate.
Yeah, it's kind of weird news coming out right now. It just seems like a weird time. You'd think that that would come out like at the draft combine, but
I mean, this is the
what do I
top
know?
time for draft news at the beginning of February.
Yeah, I guess this is the time that Byfuglien's news is really breaking, so who knows? The flow of time is convoluted in the NHL.
I think to build off of our conversation last week about the legend that is Gritty. It came out earlier today that the assault allegations are unfounded. So there's nothing to that story. He's been cleared, I guess, basically.
Free Gritty.
Hashtag free Gritty.
Probably bribed his way out of it.
It's Gritty. He probably just like sent them a picture of his face and said like, "Let me go."
Probably blackmailed the cops and then got out. They're too intimidated by
He put a
his
picture. He put a picture on the inside of the detective's house's door. That's just
yeah,
said like it's just a
it
picture of him
me.
that says "It me, Gritty."
Just writes it me in his mirror. They're probably too
Basically.
intimidated by his jean jacket jorts combo. Yeah, pretty funny. It's just a weird story all
It
around.
was, and I
That's
think my favorite part about this whole thing is like you'd think with a mascot that it would like there's a person inside, so you think like the charges would eventually go to that person. It wouldn't just stay as
yeah,
like Gritty the whole time, but like the entire time of the story, we still don't know who Gritty is. Everything was going against Gritty.
yeah.
Like the
The entity
like
that
Gritty
is
himself was
Gritty.
being charged of that, not the person who plays Gritty.
Yeah, it's kind of like the the Hamburglar or something instead of like the guy in the suit. It's very
Exactly.
weird. Yeah. Well, at least Gritty's free to torment all of North America moving forward.
I can't wait to see who he punches next.
Probably another child in the back with a running start.
A 10-year-old next time.
Yeah, he's getting younger and younger until it's very unacceptable. How young do they have to be for him to get charged? Social experiment.
Well, we'll find out eventually.
It's just a prank, bro. It's just a prank, bro.
The latest YouTube sensation. Gritty punching
Gritty,
children.
gritty punch. It could be like one of those, like the challenges that you do, like the ALS challenge and all that sort of stuff. It's just the gritty punch. You just go up and run, run and punch someone. So dumb. Such a great mascot for Philadelphia, the city that
It kind
threw
of fits.
batteries at
Yeah,
Santa.
it fits. It's perfect.
Yeah, it is. Well, is there anything else that you wanted to go over here, Sean?
I think that about wraps things up for this week. So if you enjoy what you're listening to, make sure to spread the word around with your family and your friends. To keep up to date with the latest content, you can follow us on Instagram at Clappercast Media or on Twitter at Clappercast. Thank you all for tuning in, and we will be back next week for some more hockey talk.